everybody. Welcome back to the Health Bridge. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Pedram Shojai.
Hey, Sarah. Hi, everybody.
In fact, I forgot to say it's Dr. Sarah Gottfried, and I am so excited because we are here with one of our dear friends and also our personal physician, Dr. Alan Christensen. Hi, Alan.
Hey, you guys. This is so awesome to be here with you both.
We're so excited to have you, and I feel like, we've taken our listeners through this experience of the gong where we did some baseline testing, and now we're about 2 months into the gong. And I thought it would be helpful for us to talk a little bit about what we've been doing together, including you have a really specific system for helping people reset their health. And maybe that's a good place to start. What do you do with people? Like, what is your system?
It's really a matter about discovery and really seeing what pieces are out of place. Over the years, I've realized that our bodies have this crazy powerful capacity to move back to great health and just to be thriving. And when they're not there, there's some tangible reason for it. So it's a matter of just uncovering what the key reasons are for a given individual and letting the body do what it's trying to do anyway and move back to balance.
Sorry, Sarah. I was going to say, we had we did a lot of blood work, saliva, urine, genetic testing. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else you could have gotten out in terms of data points out of us. And we took a really wonderful baseline, and I'm currently on day 60 of this thing, and just spent a weekend with Alan and his family up there. And
so much fun to have you.
It was great. And so here we are, serious people in the world, right? And the first thing he does is look at me and say, "Hey, I know you're in a conference, but if you want to play hooky, why don't you jump in my new Jeep and let's go to Sedona and rappel into a sinkhole?" And he talk about had me at hello. So we just went and played all day. It's just, you love to play. You love to really push the envelope on being outdoors and doing all sorts of wonderful stuff. But you could do that because you're healthy, right? You could do that because you take care of your body, and you've been helping us take care of our bodies. So that system-based approach that you're talking about is looking at numbers that your average doctor is usually not looking at because it's not quite pathology yet. And I'd love for you to speak to that.
For sure. There's markers of illness and there's markers of function. And so often what happens in medicine is that there's screens that are done just for markers of long-term illness. You've got high cholesterol, for example. And we've got a lot of people marketing pills to doctors that can change these markers of illness. And the sad fact is, by changing them, by using pills, you don't even cut the risk of the illness. They don't even make a big difference in your health. But all those types of markers is just signs of dysfunction. They're not causes of dysfunction. When we look at much more fundamental levels, we look at your genetic requirements, your body's nutrients, any stressors on your immune system, any toxins that don't belong inside of your body, the level of key regulating hormones. When we look at these real base functional levels and then correct their imbalances, then things really fall into line. Things really come back into place.
This is great stuff. And this is, kind of something we've been talking about a lot is the functional medicine approach, as opposed to the old broken healthcare system that we have, which is more disease-based. So I love that you practice this. I feel like you're foremost in the world in terms of your ability to think through the systems of the body. I want to make this so concrete for people. And Pedram and I, as you may know, we tend to share a lot on our show. We've already told people that I have a problem with MTHFR, and Pedram and I have an issue with fatty liver. So maybe we could get super specific about some of the markers that people have and walk them through this. Maybe starting with the liver. Could we talk a bit about the liver and how Pedram and I are in our gong trying to heal our livers?
Yeah. So fatty liver syndrome, or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it's crazy common stuff. And it's really a manifestation of the body not burning its fuel right. We take in food, we make it into some base molecules, and we're going to burn it or we're going to stick it away in storage somewhere. And the more we're burning, the more we're energized. We're happy, we want to play, our muscles are activated. The more we're storing, the more we're growing stuff we don't want to grow. and the more we're just run down and not at our best. So between the large amount of pollutants we're exposed to and the way foods have been modified, we're really apt to have more things just get stuck in our liver. And our livers can enlarge and they can show changes. And it affects upwards of 30% of the adult population at some degree. But the cool thing is that it's very reversible. We'll talk about more specifics and some findings that way with Pedram.
Oh, good. Okay. Now, how do you diagnose it? I know that for me, I had an ALT that was about 22, 24, something like that. Pedram, my brother, I think where were you? In the 30s?
No, I think he was in the high 40s. I can get the old one in front of me, but I think it was higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's some diagnoses that are pretty easy to see, and some things we see more by clues. And fatty liver disease, the perfect way to diagnose it would be to take someone's liver out and analyze that.
We didn't do that, everybody. Spoiler alert. We didn't take out our livers.
Yeah, no live organ donation going on here. So not practical. So there's clues that we see. We can see signs of liver inflammation, sometimes even normal, but outside of how it looks in healthiest populations. We can also see clues about how the blood sugar is being regulated or how iron's being moved around in the body. So some combination of these clues in the absence of other diseases that would cause them would really point towards fatty liver syndrome. Specifically, ALT scores are central to that. And women, we should see them below 18. Men, we should see them below 30. So that creeping up, that's one suspicious finding right there.
And can you tell our listeners what the ALT is? We kind of talk about it, but we haven't gotten specific about what the heck it is.
Sure. So alanine aminotransferase, there's a lot of enzymes, there's a lot of chemicals that cause changes to occur that are more unique to being inside of your liver. And every part of your body is breaking and rebuilding. It's always wearing out and getting replaced. It's pretty crazy, just this constant renewal that's occurring naturally. So as liver cells naturally are breaking down, they spill their stuff into the bloodstream. And they should, it's typical. So how much of the liver enzymes are in the bloodstream is how fast those cells are breaking down. And some is perfectly healthy. But when they're turning over too fast, we know the liver is inflamed or injured in some way. And then we see the amount of the unique liver chemicals just above where they should be.
And that seems to happen a lot more often than we thought because, it's subclinical. I mean, people aren't coming in saying, ow, my liver hurts, right? But they are, maybe low-grade fatigue, maybe, just not metabolizing well, putting on weight. I mean, what are some of the symptoms that you'll see that are common that your average person would walk in with that might potentially have this going on?
Those are very good ones. Sometimes people do notice pain or discomfort, and that can be vaguely in that area. Or there can be more tendencies towards heartburn or gas or bloating. And we can also see pain along the right shoulder area. This is an area where pain can refer and not be exactly where it started from. So there also can be those who have like pressure or sensation of fullness. And because the liver has so dang many jobs, there's so many things that it keeps control of, if it's ever not at its best, a lot of other symptoms start to show up, or a lot of other systems start to compromise. So blood sugar may not be as tightly regulated. Energy levels may not be as consistent. Repair of tendons or ligaments may not happen quite as readily. So those are all things that can occur when your liver is not at its happiest.
So this is such a good point. And I think part of my complaint when I came to you, Alan, was I'm fat and I need to fix it. So that was the main thing I saw. In fact, I had a body fat measurement where I found that, most of my fat was concentrated right in my midsection. And you were so encouraging and loving as I sent you those results. I also would say as a clinician that one of the most common things I see, I'm glad that you gave us kind of the broad picture of how this shows up, but one of the most common things I see is this elevated ALT. And I just want to make the point for our listeners that this is a very common test that you get with your doctor. Even if you're seeing a conventional doctor, you will often get a comprehensive metabolic panel where they're running an ALT. And if you look at the normal ranges that they use for the standard labs like Quest and LabCorp, you may have an ALT as a woman of 25 and they're telling you it's totally normal. But Alan is mentioning this really important game changer, this new optimal range for women, as you said, 18 or less. I sometimes use 20 or less depending on the study. And then for men, you want it to be below 30. So I just wanted to make this point that it's still within the normal range, but it can be this sign of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Yeah, and it's so commonly underdiagnosed, even if it is somewhat elevated. And the range is very different from region to region, from lab to lab. So yeah, you can be well within normal range, but still have something very critical that's not healthy.
Yeah, and this is kind of a mark of the change in how we're looking at medicine, this change of guard. Because old world medicine would say, okay, well, your number hasn't gone above this yet, so come back when you're sick so we could give you drugs, right? Whereas, why don't we make some micro adjustments and not hit that iceberg, right? And so you put us on a very interesting diet. We started to move around the way we cycled our carbs, and we did protein in the morning and all that. And I'd love to talk about that because you're on this new gestalt. It's this really fascinating way of looking at the use of food as medicine, and I'm just so happy that I've been doing it. It's changed my mood, my energy, and all of it. It's really simple in a lot of ways, but man, has it changed a lot of things.
Cool. And your numbers came back in line too. So I realized that food, of course, can wreck our health, but even when food was not the sole culprit, food can really heal us. You know, we've got to eat anyway, so we can use it in ways that are strategic. So much of our health crises come down to our delicate balance, our delicate rhythms being disturbed. And one of the more central of those is our daily circadian balance. You know, how the hormones that wake us up get shut off throughout the day, and if those work right or not. So once that's thrown off, we can gain weight, we can get inflamed, we can have poor mental function, we can have more pain. And I realized that if we time our foods in the right way, we can rebuild that rhythm. You know, carbs have gotten really a bad rap, or in the past they were given a free pass. You know, they're all good or they're all bad. And so often in cases like that, there's a kernel of truth to each side. You know, there's a capacity for them to help us and a capacity for them to hurt us. And I've shown that it's not really just about if they're good or bad, but when they're good or bad and how they work at different times of day. You know, the generalization is our need and our positive response to carbs is so much greater later in the day than it is earlier. You know, we sleep better, we build more fuel for the following day more effectively, and we can heal our bodies better when we've got them. We don't need as much earlier, but later they can make a real big difference.
This is such a good point. And the last time that I got you to come over to my house for dinner, I made sure that we had some sweet potatoes on the dinner table. So that was super fun.
And they were good. I think I had thirds.
I noticed that and I was really proud. So I want to ask you, you know, when you talk about carb timing or carb cycling and how to reset the adrenal system, I happen to know that you're a biohacker and you tried this on yourself and then you actually tried it on some patients and then you did a larger study, a larger clinical study. Can you tell us, I hope we're not giving away too much information here, but can you tell us a little bit about what you found in your study?
For sure. You know, and this started out with me being a competitive cyclist doing about 200, 300 miles per week and gaining weight and getting pre-diabetic in the process of it. And I thought, what the heck is up with this? So I really got into micromanaging my blood sugar first, and I would check it every minute of the day for a week. You know, use a special device that did that. And I learned that by adding in carbs at different times and different types, I could have more food and have better control of all of it. And so, yeah, like you said, we did this with more and more people that wanted to shift out of diabetes and did a clinical trial. And the cool thing is we saw that it really confirmed my belief that our bodies strive towards being healthy and being balanced. And in a state of health, we can regulate our metabolism. You know, our bodies gravitate towards a good, reasonable size. So we saw that within a month, people, their rhythm, their daily cycle could repair just with diet alone. We saw close to a 60% correction of that rhythm just by timing the carbs in the right ways. So it was hugely powerful and awesome to see all the feedback from those that have had their health transformed from it.
So I know you have a book that's coming out in December, and I've read it. One of the few privileged people that have gotten a chance to look at it, and it's phenomenal. And we're not going to do a spoiler on your book because I'm encouraging all of our readers to run out and get it. It's revolutionary, really. And so the Adrenal Reset Diet, and it's going to be available. I think December 6th, you said. And so this has personally worked for myself and for Sarah. I mean, I'm day 60 into this gong, and I feel better. It's working. I've lost weight, and the circles under the eyes are gone, and 60 days from now you're going to be the same person you were if you do the same things, or you just make a couple micro adjustments and boom, I feel a lot better. So can you tell me about what is happening in these 60 days? Like what's changing and what's happening inside this monkey named Pedram that's making him suddenly feel better, right?
Our bodies have two operational modes. I call them surviving and thriving. And when we're surviving, we're afraid we're going to lose our food tomorrow. And we're afraid bad things are going to happen. And afraid, not even psychologically, but chemically. We act as if, our body acts as if it's in a state of crisis or danger. And when it's like that, it stores everything away. So all the good fuel you could do fun stuff with, it just gets made into junk around the organs. The other mode is the thriving mode. And when you move back to that, you take that fuel out and you burn it. And you rock your mission with it. You've got power and you're engaged. So what's been happening in your body is you've been switching modes. You've been moving out of that survival state back to where you can freely burn energy. And the cool thing is when you're really deeply in that, that's where your body wants to stay. So the transition's the biggest part. It takes less effort to maintain that than it does to transition that. So yeah, really cool.
Very cool stuff. And Alan, I want to take on heavy metal toxicity for a moment because I feel like you recognized in both Pedram and I that we are toxic beings. And can you talk about that a little bit? Like how do our listeners get exposed to lead and mercury, and what are some of the consequences of having toxic levels?
This is such a big deal, and it's tragic how pervasive it is, and it's tragic how poorly understood and recognized it is. Right now you can drill half a mile deep in Antarctica and you can find high levels of DDT. Human breast milk you couldn't sell as a commercial product because of the pesticide levels inside of it. So our planet's polluted, unfortunately. And some people think about exposure being if your job is spraying pesticides, or if you're working on an assembly line, you got metals all around you. But it's really just waking up and breathing. It's breathing and eating in the modern world. And there are differences of exposure. Some people, like I lived on tuna during college. I tried to eat low fat and get protein and do it on a budget. And so I got mercury from that. So there are some contamination sources that we can be exposed to. But there's also variations in how well we detoxify. If you've got 50 people in a room and they're all exposed to some paint off-gassing, not all 50 will have the same amount stay inside of their bodies. So sometimes there's a lot coming in, but there's always some coming in. And so for some people, per their genes, per their digestive health, per their diets, they just have less detox capacity and more stuff bioaccumulates inside of them.
That's a tough rap too, because a lot of us weren't aware of the toxic exposure that we got. A lot of us lived next to some industry growing up in Pittsburgh or wherever, and it is what it is. And the part that gets me is, okay, so there's all these people that are like, well, I tested my hair and I didn't have any mercury. It's like, great, well, how long did it take for that hair to grow out? right? For me, never again. But, how long did it take for that hair to grow out? 6 months, 8 months? Great. So you've had no real mercury exposure in the last 8 months. And so we didn't see any, so you're fine. But you had us do a challenge with urine to really bring out what's stuck in the body's systems from, I don't know, maybe amalgams in my 20s or, some sort of exposure Sarah had in her 30s that you won't see in the hair analysis. So I'd love for you to speak to that quickly.
For sure. In terms of our toxic burden, there's our recent exposure and then our long-term accumulation, what's really stuck deep inside of us. We've all got things that have entered our body in the last few days that we're trying to do something with. We're trying to excrete them or change them in some way, and most of it we can do a pretty good job with. So there are short-term markers that will show what's just gotten in, but that doesn't give us the full picture of what might be really stuck, what the whole life's burden might be. One I'll see quite a bit is lead. And generally, people born after the mid-'80s have lower amounts than those of us born before the mid-'80s. So even what was exposed to us in the distant past, that can stay lodged in our bones and in our kidneys. So by checking that, we provoke, we challenge, we push it out, and we see how much comes out. And by doing it in controlled methods, per protocols, you can get a better sense on not just what's come in the last few days, but what's been stuck in your body from your whole life's buildup.
This is such an important point. And, Alan, as you know, I'm in the amazing opportunity of perimenopause right now. And so I'm seeing the deposits that I made in my bone with heavy metals from many years ago, including I had 4 amalgams when I was a teenager that I had removed, but I still think the vapors, made some deposits. And then we know that women on average, I was just talking to Pedram on his summit for Origins, his movie, about how the average woman gets about 10 pounds of lead through her lipstick over her lifetime, which is a massive amount. And I only wear organic lipstick now, but I can tell you, when I was a teenager in my 20s and my 30s, I was lipstick girl, and it wasn't organic. I don't even think it was available then.
10 pounds, holy mackerel.
10 pounds, it's a lot. So I feel more compassion for my mercury and lead levels. But I just want to make this point that even if you're super careful and you only are using organic products and you don't have any amalgams, sometimes this can be from decades ago. And as you start to remodel your bone more in perimenopause, it can really show up. So I just want to make that point for our listeners.
Yeah.
God,
sure.
I'm just thinking about all probably the 2 pounds of lead that I've ingested just from kissing those women.
Oh my gosh!
Toxic exposure at the nightclub. Wait a minute.
It's like a secondhand lipstick exposure.
Wait a minute.
That's good. I'm gonna get that URL, Pedram. That's
So
awesome.
Alan, what are we seeing in terms of some results? I know I was just there on Friday and got some blood work done, and got a wonderful chance to hang out with your delightful staff. I mean, if anyone is unhappy with where they're at with their physicians, I know you guys got a long wait list and all that kind of stuff, but I'm still sending them your way. Alan's got this incredible clinic with some of the coolest and just best people I've ever met in the Phoenix area. And so it's well worth a trip out there just because I've not seen a clinic run so smoothly with people smiling, I think ever. Right? But yes, so what are we seeing in terms of results and what do we need to do? And I know Sarah's up next and she's got to draw some blood for you, hopefully this week.
Oh, I did it last week. It's just not back yet.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
So I'm looking down because I've got your scores in front of me right now. And, the goal is to really see your blood sugar regulation, your liver function, these key pathways, also your cortisol metabolism, to see those move back to optimal ranges. And they've done that. You've really had this full reset. You've gone from this early fatty liver state to good health and real normal. Your scores, I've got your old ones here too. Your prior ALT score was actually 54.
Woo! Ouch!
Yeah, many cases that's flagged as being abnormal, per the reference range. But you came down. So here's a funny thing too, Pedram. You confided in me, as long as we're putting it all out here. You confided in me that a day or two before the test, might not have been the best time to test.
Oh, I wonder what that means.
Well, I'm just saying, once in a while I end up in some social occasions.
Did you have another vodka and something something?
I might have. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we were.
This is a pretty good acid test. This was a real world type thing.
Yeah. Well, I had some friends over for 2 weeks, and and we enjoy some whiskey at the end of the night, and I typically do not drink, but when these guys were over, it was like it was playtime.
So, given that, you went from 54 down to 26.
Wow.
Whoa! Yeah. Nice job, Pedram.
Yes. Thank you.
Below the threshold.
Yeah, that was awesome. And it probably would have been a few points lower otherwise, but still it was fine. It was still totally good. We also saw your blood sugar correct too. You were in a range of concern. It was higher than optimal, and you came way back down to what's healthy and what's well regulated in terms of your average long-term blood sugar score. So that was excellent.
Yes. And I can tell you subjectively, I just feel great. I feel much better. And so it's obviously working inside and out.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to circle back. I feel like we, when talking about lead and mercury, I think it might be helpful to really get into some of the details about what lead and mercury do in the body when they're more in the toxic range. Some of the symptoms that Pedram and I may have been experiencing, and hopefully we're not experiencing as much anymore. And also maybe the retesting. When is the ideal time to retest?
Yeah, awesome questions. So what do they do? Why do they affect us? We've got some minerals that are used in just every part of our bodies. We've got things like zinc and iron and magnesium, and they've all got hundreds of really important roles to play. The problem with some of the big toxins like lead and mercury is they go in places that good minerals should go, but they don't do what the good minerals would do. It's literally like putting a fork in the outlet. They get in these places and they block important chemical reactions. So mental function. People talk about the senior moments or the part-timer symptoms or the brain fog or whatnot. And
never.
For many, that's a big part of it. These things lodge in the brain and they block the healthy communication between the cells. Also, big organs of regulation, so the liver, the kidneys, even things like immune cell formation, chronic inflammation, cartilage repair, our overall joint health. They're strongly affected by that. So we can see vague symptoms, and we can see specific changes because of those toxins. In terms of time frame for retesting, typically 6 months is helpful in terms of a regime like you all are on. And I'll double check in terms of what I laid out at the very beginning, but it is important to confirm. We always want to know that what you're doing is based upon some objective reason, and you also want to know that it worked, that you got to the goal, and you changed what you wanted to change.
Definitely. Okay, so lead and mercury, total party crashers in the body, and Pedram and I are only going to get smarter. So the Health Breed Show is only going to be getting better as we get these toxins out of our body. These party crashers are, escorted out by the bouncers in our body. So let me ask you, I remember once you were talking about lead and how it can turn on your stress hormones. I think you said that it makes some of the less potent stress hormones turn into more potent stress hormones. Can you mention that? Because I think that's such a fascinating area in terms of, trying to make sense of why we're so stressed out. Yeah. Sometimes it's not just a matter of retraining your mind. It's actually that you've got too much lead.
Yeah, and it's a great point. We have a strong sense of what mental emotional stress is, but the part that's hard to really grasp is that so many things make us feel that way, make us respond that way, that we wouldn't think about. Some are totally invisible. So when we're in a state of crisis, we divert, like you were saying, our weak stress hormones like cortisone into stronger stress hormones like cortisol. And we can do that intentionally. But there's a lot of things that make that happen unintentionally. How much lead you've got in your visceral fat changes your visceral fat and makes it create stress hormones. As if we don't have enough already with busy modern life, we have things that are chemically pushing us the same way that a deadline, or a relationship stressor, or a financial crisis, all these things are triggered by chemicals as well as they are by situations.
Oh man. Okay, so I would love you. I was mentioning in another show that you were telling me about chimpanzees and what is happening, because this is, I mean, yes, life has gotten crazy and modernity is a challenge, but you're on to some really crazy data here that points to the fact that this stress is universal and it has more to do with the environment and life in general than just our bills.
Yeah, and it manifests in our weight gain as well. So we've seen with animals now that they are getting obese and gaining weight at these alarming rates. So chimpanzees, between 1990 and 2010, their body weight went up by about a third. A little more for males, tiny bit less for females, but they gained about a third of their body weight each of those 2 decades when they were given the same amounts of food they've always had, and when they were still being as active as they were before. So when I see that type of data, to me, the old belief that our weight is a function of our habit, our behavior, our personality, our willpower, it just knocks that wall over. It totally just destroys that. It's like, what, the chimps have willpower problems that they lost? It makes it just silly to think about it being anything besides a disease process. And it's this big overall response to stressors that affects us in so many ways.
So even the chimps are stressed.
In a chemical way they are, and their bodies are going into a survival state, and they're taking the same calories they otherwise would have burned, and they're storing them. They're putting them away for the future. We're also seeing morbid obesity show up among chimpanzees now for the first time.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. I feel like I could talk to you forever, Alan, but I also know you happen to be in your office right now seeing patients, and I want to be mindful of your time. But I want to say to our listeners that you can feel how big Alan's heart is. I mean, it just really comes through. I'm reading this book right now about aligning your personality and your soul. And Alan, I just feel like your personality and your soul are so aligned and so congruent. So it means so much to me to have the benefit of working with you. Pedram and I are both so grateful. For people who are interested in learning more about your system and your program, where should they go to learn more?
The best place is drchristensen.com, drchristenson.com. That's kind of a clearinghouse of all things.
Fantastic. I know you have a book coming up in December. It's amazing. I've read it, and I just, I can't speak highly enough about you and your work and all of it. And you're like my buddy, genius kid, Nerf gun shooting. Like I'm in his house playing Nerf gun wars with him and his kid. And here he is.
Yeah, Sarah. Well, actually, there was a food fight also. We got a lot of for that one.
You did. I actually had to walk away. His wife was steaming. He started the food fight.
It started. I don't know why.
And we haven't even started about how amazing your wife is. So we just absolutely love you, Alan. Thank you so much for taking us on and doing our gongs with us. It's just been an amazing experience.
You guys are totally incredible, and you're just changing the world. And if I can help in some way to help what you're doing work better, then I'm completely honored to do so. So yeah, thank you.
You already have, my friend. Guys, Alan Christensen, we love you, man. So we'll see you hopefully. We'll have you back on when your book is coming out. But, guys, check him out. He is a force of nature, and he's a delightful human being.
drchristensen.com. Thank you, Alan Christensen.
Bye-bye, you guys. Thanks so much.